Greetings and salutations, friends. I am Jeremy Tank, and you are in the Manifest Design Experience. So this is a little bit of a strange week. I'm not doing a whole bunch of workshops this week, or worksheets this week. I really want to have a conversation around our mind, our brain, our perception of things. And this is brought up by a few different conversations I've had recently on private messages. Thank you so much. Um, just so we can create a basis of understanding of how we come to be where we are and how we see the world. Because um, mindset is really just this way of looking at things, right? But how does that get to be? How do we get to be around how we've come to be where we are? So today I've got three topics to discuss, and they're probably going to take all of about the same hour. Um, the first one is how am I me? Which is really discussion about how we evolve consciously from a very early age. And going with that is the levels of consciousness, and going with that is how does mindset work? This is one of the topics that I am far and away different from other people who are interested in branding and marketing, is my understanding of the mind and consciousness and the connection of these things. This is part of what makes the Manifest Design Experience so much different than anything else, because I'm going to teach you this foundation that really shows you there's nothing wrong with you. You are enough. You can accomplish anything if you choose. If this is the path that you choose to take in any direction, it is yours to go after and get. So without further ado, this is going to be a lot of me drawing and you listening. If you are hoping to get to a lot of exercises, we'll get to maybe a little bit. You know what? Next week, we're going to get to a whole bunch of that next week. Really, this is a focus session, so dive in and enjoy. Let's get to it. So the first step here, the first thing I want to share with you is how am I me? Or really what makes us get to being who we are, and how do we stay in that state? Because the truth is that when we're born, we're not an empty slate. We experience inside the womb. We actually share emotional connections and physiological connections with our mothers at that point. And there is a structure of memory that happens at that point that is not fully sense memory, like touch, sight, sound, smell, taste. Those aren't as fully developed until we're born. You can definitely hear inside the womb, and there's some sight, and you still experience something inside the womb. And what happens is these experiences, get my board here, these experiences, if we go ahead and draw this line, take you from a point of experiencing something. Let's say that there is something that happens to your mother outside the womb, or you inside the womb. You tend to have a spike in activity in the brain. And when this happens, if it happens once or twice, when you reach sort of these upper limits of this experience, it becomes a point of trauma, cellular trauma, really, inside the brain, inside the body, in this case, inside the womb. And then when that trauma leaves, even from their mother, then that point goes back down. And after you're born, this is still sort of what happens. This is actually the learning process as we continue and grow and become people. Every instance of hardship that we come across, we spike up into this zone, and this is I think it's 4 F's now: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? These are the basic reactions to trauma, to things happening in our lives. And when we're exceptionally young, we can't do anything. Like, for example, trapped in the womb here, you can't do anything. You are really just reliant on being in the womb and being a child. And as you get older, these sort of spikes cause fight or flight reactions. At the point of that fight or flight reaction, we have to make a choice. Which one, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, do we do? And this becomes the basis for choice. It's a choice of reaction. And all of these throughout life, every time you try to take a step and fall down, every time you learn to eat solid food, every time you have teeth coming in and have gum pain, your brain is going through this process again and again and again. And as you get older, let's say you're born, there's a whole different structure of memory that actually becomes active. And in that structure of memory, what happens is you can actually hit a point like this, continue on in some time, and when things return to normal, continue on with your normal basis. Now, what makes you, uniquely you, is all of these points up here are influencing you. They are telling your anatomy, your limbic brain, your spinal cord, your cells even, it's telling it how to behave in a traumatic instance and how to overcome it. And really what happens that especially in early childhood, that's somewhere between birth and about 7 years old, is that these parts that happen, these parts of your lives, end up getting kind of cut off from the brain a little bit. And I'll go ahead and draw the experience of the brain. How's that? Ooh. So the experience of the brain and the mind looks a bit like this, and it's a funky egg shape. And what we've got is the conscious and unconscious. And by unconscious, I do not mean subconscious. Subconscious would be sort of like the reactions that happen inside your body, the automatic things within fight or flight, the things that shift on a cellular level. The work of Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and Dawson Church really show that on a cellular level, your cells are responding to the energy, the proteins, the nutrients in your blood on a micro level. It is almost as if each cell is its own computer, receiving signals from the blood and receiving signals from outside of themselves and then processing that inside of themselves. And a lot of that can be tied into the way the subconscious reacts. It's really a reaction of your entire body and the community of cells, viruses, bacteria, everything that makes you you and that has influenced you in your life is continuing to process through that cellular respiration, essentially, bringing in nutrients and other signalers from outside the cell. They go into the cell, oftentimes into the mitochondria or the nucleus of the cell, and sometimes it affects the DNA itself. That would be epigenetics, changing the genetic code, the DNA itself, based on things that are in the blood, including emotional markers, including sensory markers, and things that you're experiencing. And then those turn around and send other signals back to the brain. Now, all of that is unconscious, but some part of your brain is registering all of those millions, trillions of signals from all of your cells on a moment-to-moment basis. And when I look at what's happening in the body and the mind, a lot of that is termed the subconscious, because there are ways that your cells have been trained to respond based in even back in the womb, how you reacted to different things and how your cells learned to react really before you became fully conscious and trained to be a person. So as a person, you and I can stand here and say, okay, there are things that are in my conscious mind that I think about that move me forward. We can also say that there are things in our subconscious mind that move us forward. And the subconscious mind really is not part of this. I'm going to go ahead and put a line down here and say this is subconscious. And the subconscious, see right down here, it's happening at the exact same time as the conscious and unconscious. And it's providing feedback in the form of sensory information and knowledge from your body about everything around it. So this could be senses, this could be electromagnetic, this could be light, it could be warmth, it could be anything inside of you that feels weird, awkward, sixth sensey, woo-woo, however you want to term it. Conscious now is anything that is moving into your brain that causes you to think about it. And we might also think of that as the active experience, because that's the conscious. And when we say active experience, what happens, and I'm going to show you over here, let's say something in your unconscious, when you think about it, it's primed to become into your conscious. And by primed, what I mean is that the neurons that gather together to form that network of pictures, images, words, feelings that are a memory, because that's what we've got. Pictures plus words plus feelings equals memory. Pictures plus words plus feelings. You don't really have a memory without some sort of picture or word being tied to it. You don't have a memory without some sort of feeling being tied to it. All of these things are what cause us to retain these neural networks. And really, when these neurons are connecting, they're creating a frequency, right? And that frequency puts out even like emotional proteins into the body. It puts out all sorts of different chemicals to draw us forward, push us forward. There's other push or pull, right? But all of those things, before you think of it, they're unconscious. It doesn't happen, it doesn't occur, but as soon as I say a thing, it becomes part of your conscious experience, your active experience. For example, I am thinking of a word right now. You don't know what the word is, but it's in my consciousness, and as soon as I say it, recognize the moment when it goes from being unconscious to conscious to you. So when's the last time you rode a bicycle? See, now you're it causes you to think about active experience. Let's just go say bicycle, bike. There's a piece of that experience that it moved from completely unconscious, which would be way out here, into conscious. Now there's part of your consciousness that grasps the word bicycle, and that's over here. And it starts to think about bicycle, and then it thinks about, okay, was the last time you ride? And who were you with? What did you feel like? What was going on? What was the weather? See, all of these different aspects then are like the network that chimes into your conscious experience. Meanwhile, on the unconscious experience, there are, same thing, lots of different things that you think about, but are this. I'll write it out. This is the line of disassociation. That goes right down the center of this. So when you think of something, it brings up all of the pieces of what you're thinking about into the active experience. But over time, you don't need to think about so much of what you're doing. For example, riding a bike. After you ride a bike for a little while, you don't have to think about riding a bike. You just do it. And that's what all of this is, because your brain, your mind goes, well, I don't really need to focus on the mechanisms of how that happens anymore. So it goes ahead and disassociates other aspects of that entire experience. And the subconscious actually starts to pick up some of that. Like when we ride a bike, we need to burn more energy. We need to make things more efficient. We need to make sure that we have ATP, which is the energy, the battery of the body, to make sure that we can move forward. And that's subconscious level. So all of this together becomes what you are and how you're thinking on a regular basis. The challenge is when we hit these trauma points, the brain can't handle it, honestly. The brain gets overwhelmed with that much trauma. And it happens fairly easily. And what happens is that to protect us, the brain disassociates the highest peaks on that trauma. It's not disappeared, but it becomes part of the brain that is subdued and put under. So in essence, what we're doing when you're born, you've got pretty much you starting at the top. I wish these pens were darker. We got you starting at the top, and you are open. You are, let's say everything went swimmingly while you're in the womb and developing. You went ahead and developed the right kind of memory, the right kind of brain structures, the right kind of everything. And when you came into this life, when you came into this world, when you came into this universe, everything was absolutely perfect. And you were a perfect child. You were open and smiling and happy, and everything was great. Your parents were happy to see you. See? Starts out fantastic. And then, so this open state is really, they say that animals and kids see and experience more than people later in life. And this open state, I kind of tie in with the the quantum universe or the greater being or the greater intuitive essence of ourselves. And I'm calling that, for sake of this, the superconscious. Because there is a tie-in, I can see if I can turn this a little darker. Why I normally use the tools to make round shapes. So that really is the greater sense of ourselves when we come into this body, when we come into this world. There is a great openness. And in quantum science, that's like the unobserved, right? In quantum science, the observer changes the experiment. By observing it, we create solidity, we create reality, we create the results of the experiment. And that's sort of what the superconscious and the mind of a baby, an infant, is at that point. It's wide open. It holds all possibilities of the future. Every possibility, anything that that child can become is literally everything, because that brain is wide open and ready for it. And then over time, we're going to proceed this way. Over time, like ages 0 to 7, a child learns extremely fast. In fact, the brain stays in a theta state, a theta wave state. There is beta, which is your normal, everyday kind of stressed state. There is high beta, which is probably like people on the floor of the stock market and like super high stress all the time. It is a distracting state. It turns off part of the prefrontal cortex. It is highly reliant on the fight or flight response and in trained responses. Alpha is the next one. It's a little bit slower. It's starting to go into a flow state, a start of a meditation state. Alpha is calm and relaxed. After that is theta. And theta is deep hypnosis or a deep, deep meditation state. It is very much inside of ourselves, inside our imagination, that deep place that's sort of relaxing and entertaining. Not quite asleep, but really deep down in there. And then there is the gamma state, which is so far down into our consciousness that it actually rebounds back up and excites the brain, unites the brain in every different direction. And that's really brain coherence, is this gamma state that realigns the energies and thought processes forwards, backwards, side to side through the corpus callosum of the brain, and creates a coherent signal that is exceptionally high. And people say that this is like leaving the body, and this is like seeing things and experiencing ecstasy within our own bodies. So that's cool. But children ages 0 to 7 are just automatically in theta state. Like they stay that way. It's basically like they're being hypnotized for the first 7 years of their lives, how to behave, how to act and react for the rest of their lives. And what happens is, their world, their potential, their way of being gets a little bit slower. And this is the conscious. And as I showed on the last page, the conscious is really split in two. There's the active experience of the consciousness, and there's the unconscious experience. And being part of this conscious experience is really about duality. It's like light and dark, yin and yang, black and white. As we're trying to live and be, what we see is that we are comparing the past, predicting the future, hoping to God that it is right, eventually having to understand that it's not about being right, it's just about being. So there's a close-off that we can see. And I like to say that, this whole growth process is sort of like a filtering out. Every experience, every trauma is taking light out of the experience of possibility through action, through being who we are, being exposed to the world and growing. It's filtering out so much of the possibilities because it is becoming. And then underneath all of this is the subconscious. And the subconscious, hold that up a little bit more, is tied in with all of this and is really about taking all of those ideas, taking all of those concepts. Subconscious has no language. Subconscious has no capability for understanding. The subconscious is doesn't understand positive and negative. It understands concepts. It understands go. An example of the subconscious is, I want you to not think about an elephant. Like, you can't not think about something. As soon as you think about it, it activates it. And that's right up here. But then the subconscious, that's how it takes actions. That's how it understands what to do. It is a go in a certain direction sort of programming because it wants stability. And that's why I say the subconscious has a lot to do with our bodies and with our cells, and how they function, because really this is the community of cells, community of organisms living in us, with us, trying to find stability for growth. If we were trees, the subconscious would be all of the bugs and birds and lichen and moss living on the tree and in the tree to help it grow and foster the community. You are the tree. And the subconscious are all of these pieces around that help the tree grow and prosper and be the community. And the consciousness is the consciousness of the tree, I guess. It's you trying to say, okay, how do I balance all this stuff? So that is a little bit of the levels of consciousness, but how does this affect who I am? Because if we look back here, we're filtering out the different applications of the superconscious. We are filtering out all the potentials for who we can be. And part of the manifest design experience, part of the hypnotherapy aspect of it, and this educational aspect of it, is really understanding that those possibilities are still open to you. Those possibilities are still open. Because what happened was, in the fight or flight response, we chose a certain path thinking that it would give us a certain result. And that's when we were born, before we were born. Like, these things just automatically happen. It's part of the automatic programming of this body, this life. And quantum science is agreeing with it. A lot of biology now is agreeing with it. Physics is certainly agreeing with it. And when we recognize that to protect us, our brain will disassociate certain aspects, certain traumas, certain things that we've experienced, and will actively forget about it, put it to the side, block it, choose other paths to keep us from reliving it or going through it. But all of that is in the conscious and subconscious experience. And hypnotherapy, as I was trained to utilize it as a tool, is really about moving underneath the conscious experience into the subconscious experience to help remove some of the blocks. And we can certainly see that moving down through this is really, when we're removing subconscious blocks, we're removing these. We're removing experiences that taught us at base levels that things have to be a certain way in order for us to proceed forward. We have to make a choice for our safety. Because the subconscious wants things that are familiar, stays away from the unfamiliar. It wants things that are safe, that keep us satisfied. Right? That's what subconscious is all about. This is all about creating a system, a way of being that is stable and alive. Alive is good. So the way that we become who we are is through traumas, through micro traumas. There's a great book called The Body Keeps Score that is all about the different organs and aspects of what happens within us based on emotional trauma. And the emotional trauma can come from anywhere, but certainly the first 7 years train us how to be a certain way so that we can proceed forward as people. Another book, The Tao of Trauma, is really all about these experiences, and the Tao of Trauma goes over a lot of these peaks in our everyday experience, and it is the comfort zone that supposedly gets larger over time, that we can vacillate between the highs and the lows. And every time something jumps outside of that peak, it's an opportunity for us to create another piece of ourself, another part of ourself that could be disassociated. But really, that aspect is a mental mindset that is trained to be a certain way in a certain circumstance to help us move through it successfully. And to get there, it means that our conscious and unconscious, subconscious, all the aspects of ourselves actually have to unite in a certain direction to move that. Well, that's really traumatic, and we don't know if we will survive. So what often happens is in this process, our main personality, the active experience of main personality, actually takes a little bit of a hiatus. It just kind of stops at a point and says, I'm just going to hang out here. I'm going to actually move into the unconscious experience. And then there's another aspect of us, let's say strong man, strong and brave, has to do, let's say it's a kid, okay? Easy. A 7-year-old child has to jump off the diving board, and the diving board seems really high. Well, the main experience wouldn't know, well, this is safe, it's okay. Lots of other kids are doing it, even though they've witnessed it, because when they get up, it's too frightening. And maybe you've experienced this. You got on the high dive and you stood there trying to talk yourself into it and talk. Talking doesn't do it. Getting other people to cheer for you, peer pressure, actually is a little more effective. But what happens then is that main personality, who we've always been, it can't deal with all of that trauma of the height or the jump or the pressure. And so it sort of turns off temporarily. And this other aspect of ourselves, who's strong and brave and ready to handle this circumstance, steps in and goes ahead and really, as soon as it hits this point, says, yep, I'm going to handle it, does the thing. Let's say they jump off the board. This is the diving board now. And comes back to normal. At the point of hitting the water and coming back to our experience, the normal active experience, the normal mindset, the normal personality, the main personality can take back in and step over again. And if that experience happens again, like we decide that the adrenaline, the dopamine rush after doing it is so good that we want to do it again, then this secondary personality might step up and take over again until the point that this is thought to be safe and easy and fun, at which point this personality integrates with the main personality. Now, maybe you've experienced this in another way. I know certainly when I worked in the corporate world, there was corporate Jeremy and there was after work Jeremy. And corporate Jeremy was very much settled on keeping his mouth shut, listening to what was told, offering up as many good ideas as I could, and really trying to get praise from my boss. And that was because I didn't feel like I could be regular Jeremy, which is this, in a corporate world. Because I'm a little strange, I'm a little fun, I'm a little wacky, and that's okay, because for what I do, it fits. And it's a great way for me to be. But in the corporate world, you're supposed to, kind of stay in your little cube. And so I know that there was an aspect of me who would come out the minute I would swipe in my badge and walk through those doors. And that was built on micro traumas in my corporate experience. I had to learn how to be that way. And now that I've stepped away from that for a few years, I'm actually integrating more of that back into myself. What did I like about who I was at that time? What do I like about who I am now? How can I be the best of both aspects of myself, which are both me, and take ownership of that? And that kind of comes back to the choice of, I choose to be the best of me in all the aspects and unite them so that I can be the best of me. Choice. It's a funny thing because it tells your brain what you want. So much of what we do is reaction. It's all of these traumas constantly, and then we complain about something, right? We create our own trauma. This is Joe Dispenza's work. We create our own trauma thinking about the things that happened to us yesterday, a month ago, 2 months ago. We live in that pain. We live in that trauma. We live in it again and again and again. We release dopamine because we feel so bad about it. We release cortisol because we feel so stressed about it. We actively stress our systems, dampen our immune systems. We actively create these negative emotions to remind us of how bad someone treated us before so that we can make the choice to treat them bad or make the choice to treat them better in the future. All of these are aspects of the personality that come up to trigger us, to keep us static in that state. That is subconscious training. Remember, subconscious wants to keep things stable, keep things flat, keep things going the way that they are going, because that's how the subconscious works. And these cycles keep us living day to day, essentially asleep. We never wake up to our own experiences. We live in a state of repeating patterns. And those repeating patterns create these sort of divergent personalities that, if the experiences are traumatic enough, move into disassociation so that we don't even think about it. At the point that you walk into Starbucks for the very first time, you might be overwhelmed by their drinks. You don't even know the menu. What is a venti? What do you put in a mocha? Right? There's all these questions you might have because you don't know. But after you've done that experience a little bit and a little bit more, it becomes second nature, and you kind of find something you like, so you walk in and you do it. Now, I'm associating Starbucks with trauma, but really that's how it works, because eventually it becomes so common that maybe it disassociates. So the minute you walk in the door, your mouth starts watering. This is subconscious then. Your mouth starts watering. This is Pavlovian, actually. You walk into a Starbucks, your mouth starts watering. You want that drink in your hand. Suddenly you're thinking about a chocolate croissant. You know, it's all of these chains of things that happen when we start imagining and thinking about that all become part of these trained behaviors. And this is the mechanism for trained behaviors. And the difference between the conscious and subconscious ruling, which is exactly what that is these behaviors. It's one side of us looking at the past, trying to predict a future, even though the future is not able to be predicted. And then it's another aspect of us trying to create stability, always stability. And somewhere between these two is our idea of identity. And identity is a challenge, because in branding, we want to identify your brand. We want to codify it. We want to create words and pictures to tell other people what your identity is. But you can't read a label from inside the bottle. It's something in advertising we always used, and in marketing for pharma we always used. Because from inside the bottle, you can't read it. You can't read that label. You have to get outside of it. Well, both the conscious and the subconscious believe that they understand our identity. But our identity is actually, this is our identity. It fluctuates, it changes, it moves, it shifts based on who we are and how we see the world and what's going on and what we believe about ourselves at any given time. And the challenge, for a lot of us at least, maybe this is the challenge with you, is that we think that we want to move toward a desired reality, a desired future. And we see the desired reality of like money, love, cool car. That's a car key. We see that desired reality and we think, okay, to get there, we need to be a certain ID. We have to be a certain identity, right? To have that success, to have that love. I have to change to be that identity. That's this level of thought. I have to change to be this identity. And when we look at our current reality, what we see is an identity that is, it's not a match with that. It's different, because if it were a match with that, you would be living that life, right? And that's what we want, is to get to this life. So what happens is we start taking actions, the conscious and the subconscious, to get over there. And then eventually what we realize is this identity is not this identity. There's no match. So we start to feel like a fraud. We feel like an imposter syndrome. We feel like things aren't getting along. Things aren't moving properly in the right direction. And what happens is we end up failing ourselves. The subconscious says this is too much change. It's too fast. It's too difficult. It's too whatever, and pulls us back to our current reality in some ways. When the subconscious feels that things are out of whack and we are not true to ourselves, it makes adjustments itself to feel more stable. It creates emotional signals that are sent to the limbic brain that make us feel depressed, make us feel sad, make us feel anxious, make us feel. And it's a challenge because to even name those things, we have to listen intently to the signals that we receive from our body. The dissatisfaction, the depression. And we have to then put those things into the neocortex, the newer brain, the outer brain. Evolutionarily, it's the newest part of our brain. It's the fanciest feature. And that's logic and creativity, both sides of the brain. And we have to listen to the signals going through our limbic brain, through our spinal cord, coming up through the rest of our body. We have to listen when we feel stressed, when we feel anxious. And we have to name those emotions. That's what the neocortex is for, to actually name things that's going on within us. And if we can name it, then we can start pinpointing it. But oftentimes we can't name it because what we see is that we're moving towards that future, we're moving towards our goals, but we don't feel right for some reason. And we don't feel right because the identity, the things that we should feel and believe and value, don't line up on both sides of the equation. And this is where RTT actually, for me, comes in. Because for me, RTT tells you, you are enough. You are already enough. There is nothing wrong with you. You might think, I'm not enough. I can't get from here to here. You might think, I'm not capable of moving there, that I can't, it's not available to me. There's all sorts of excuses, and it's some pretty common ones that humanity has been fighting for thousands of years. And there's a realization, though, that if we come into this world open, where there is every opportunity, every choice is available to us, how do we get back to that? Right? Because if we can get back and see that there are all these blocks from our experiences, those blocks were choices that we made based on something that happened, then maybe we can make a different choice. Maybe we can right now. Those choices were valid back then. Those choices were valid for when they happened and what happened. But now you're in a different space. You're in a different time. You're in a different mind. Really, logistically, the connections that you have now far outweigh those that were there at your beginning of your life. So the question is, can I open up enough? This is a little bit of what they call shadow work for those that you study it. Like that's a lot of subconscious beliefs, but it goes into the blocks that are coming from the superconscious. Because if you are enough, then you are right here. You are enough. You are worthy. You are awesome. Yeah, I love that. And what that is thinking about life differently. And saying, look, I can have all of this. As soon as I acknowledge that I can choose it. And by choosing it, my identity doesn't need to change. I am what I will be. But instead of letting this get a hold of us, we work from a point of creation. We work from a point of not problem solving. Versus creation. I'm a sloppy board today, but you guys get a lot of stuff. This is a lot. This is like 5 coaching sessions all at one time. I love it. So problem solving versus creation. A lot of people work from a problem solving standpoint. Something has happened in my life, point A, and I need to counter that, point B, in order to get to point C. For example, I am slightly overweight, so I need to diet and exercise to lose weight. Well, diet and exercise sounds horrible. Diet and exercise is something that my subconscious is already like, oh, I'm not good at that. That's so hard. It's so difficult. Even my conscious brain is a little bit like, whoa, diet and exercise does not sound fun. It does not sound, right? It comes from a point of stability and contrast, which is subconscious and conscious mind. Now, if we change that and we look from a creation mindset says, okay, well, what do I want to create? I want to create a body of fitness. I want to create a body of stability and growth, structure, happiness. Well, I've got that now. So, okay, if I choose that, I'm going to continue to choose a body of fitness and structure and health. What I've just done is open up the choices, because I am not choosing to counter a problem that I have. I am choosing to create a solution that really is open. It's actually accessing something more along the superconscious and saying, look, I am choosing this path, and it's not that different. I already live a path of health and intentionality and helpfulness and service and smiles and laughter and joy. I mean, this is the life that I choose to live, and that's me. So if I choose to live that and I see myself in the future, look, that's what I'm going to be. And it just happens that the side effect of that should be that I, get nice pecs and a six-pack ab. That's great. But at that point, when I move through, put super conscious up here, I identify that my identity doesn't shift. I don't need to shift who I am. I accept who I am based in literally who I am. And if there are things that come up, and because they are going to come up, because what I'm doing is I'm bypassing all of this stuff. I'm saying, okay, well, I want to move into the future. Let's just jump up to the superconscious, that point of openness, that point before I had all those blocks that told me I couldn't do things, which you hear when I start to talk about, well, I feel overweight, and my conscious and subconscious really start going, I don't want to diet. I don't want to do all these problem-solving actions. Instead, I'm going to move towards something that removes that concern entirely. I'm going to choose myself in health. I'm going to choose myself in body awareness. Now, maybe this means that I have to take up more tasks in order to do a better job at choosing that for myself. Maybe that means I need to take up more weightlifting, or maybe that means I need to take up walking more often, or maybe that means I need to take up eating more greens. But those aren't the actions to solve the problem. Those aren't actually problem-solving things I have to do. Those are things that could help me in being a better me, in choosing a better me. So that's the problem-solving versus creation mindset. And it's powerful because when we choose, when we use the words, I choose, and we look at things that we are already doing in our lives, we just need to refine them and do them better. It's creating that. My Honda Element had the catalytic converter stolen a couple weeks ago, and I was angry. I was frustrated, and I went to my mechanic, who ended up working with my insurance and talking to the sheriff about it, and going through this whole rigmarole. And my mechanic was actually the one that said, "Look, you've had this stolen. Here's what this looks like. Here's how I know." And he said it's going to be really expensive because the Honda Element, they don't make them anymore, and the parts are harder and harder to get, and the insurance only paid out a small portion. So we used he got a catalytic converter. We put it in, and I still felt like if I brought it home, they could just steal it again. And I realized that was a problem-solving mindset. Like I was trying to say, how do they not steal it? How do they, and I realized that I don't need to keep thinking and worrying about the theft. What I needed to do was move beyond that and move to a point of openness. And I sat and just kind of asked, how do I get around this? What do I do? And I ended up finding catalytic converter shields, which are essentially armor. And I bought one myself, and then I took it to my mechanic and I said, install this, please. And he looked at it. First time he'd seen anything like it, and said, okay. And he did it. And that's a creation mindset, because I wasn't focused on the problem of theft. I wasn't trying to find a different place to park my car, which was a concern. I wasn't trying to find a way to alert me when people get to the car or anything like that, because the alarm never went off the first time. Instead, I try to think, well, what can I create so this doesn't become an issue for me anymore? And it turns out that a piece of armor, shield, does the job. So that's another example, like creation mindset versus problem solving mindset. The things that move us forward are creation mindsets. We're looking for solutions. We're looking for opportunities. We're looking for growth versus finding a problem, pinpointing it, saying, this is the thing, because a lot of people point at problems. A lot of people point at small things and complain about them because they aren't the way that they should be. So the question should be, how do we get them the way that they should be? We've got to create and change the circumstances. So those are two different mindsets, but how does mindset work? How does it all come together? So let's see if I can draw this for you right here. Let's say this is my guy. Give him an ear. Ear, jaw, neck. Okay. There we go. He's got a heck of a jaw, doesn't he? Okay, so how does mindset work? Well, what happens is that we get external sense information. And that can come in, external sense information is like sight, sound, touch, smell. It's anything from outside ourselves, because really the brain is inside. Everything is carried to our brain. All of the thoughts, all of the feelings, all of the things that happen are coming from outside of our body. And then inside the brain, ooh, I drew that, so let's go ahead and draw. There we go. That's our brain down there. That's his brain. So all of this stuff comes in from the outside, goes over to the brain, and then it's processed. And what happens, I'm looking back at my little cheat sheet here. Time, language, memories, traits. So all this stuff oh gosh, values, behaviors, attitude. All of this inside our brain is what is identity. Is how we think about our identity. And all of this stuff, when it comes in, external sense information, everything you experience comes in, and it's then compared in the brain with our sense of time, our sense of language, memories, traits, values, behaviors, attitudes, like everything that makes you who you are, your identity. It's compared with all of that. I want to get this right, so sorry. So what we've got, all of this stuff comes in, and then the brain says, you know, this is Joe Dispenza again, and Lipton, and all of those guys, even Tony, what's his name? I just totally blanked it. I love it. Chris Duncan, like all these guys say, look, you get everything from the outside. And when you've got a mindset about something, what happens is all that information is brought in and compared with the identity of the mindset. So it's the internal representation. That's what this is. So you create a picture in your head of what that looks like and what that sounds like and what that is. But it's based on everything you've ever experienced before, heard before, seen before, tasted before. And then all of that stuff inside creates an internal state. And that internal state could be happy, sad, morose, joyful, right? And then that state, sort of like the limbic brain, right? Like there's a lot of fight or flight in that, but it happens back and forth with it. That state changes your physiology. It makes you, it releases hormones. It releases, if you're excited, if you need to face fight or flight, it releases dopamine or cortisol to make you either happier or feel more stressed and stress the organs. So it affects your physiology. And all of that, the thoughts that you're thinking, the internal representations that you make, the state that you're in, the physiology that you're in, that affects your behavior. So your outward everything. So when you are embracing a previous mindset, that means that you had external information that came in and you were taught a certain way of viewing the world, a certain way of based on who you were and what you needed to be in order to survive that instance, which is your internal representation of it. And then based on that, you make the choice in the state that you are in that changes your physiology to meet what that mindset states. If you have a very negative mindset, every external sense that comes in, you are going to notice it and compare it with what you believe, what you think should be happening. And what you're going to see is an internal representation that internally does not match externally. From a scientific perspective, we might say, oh, well, the internal is wrong and we need to update it to match the reality of the objective external world. And in truth, that's hard. That's real hard, because that's our ego right here. All of this is our ego inside saying, no, I'm right. This is the way things should be. We will fight for that. How many fights have you seen based on somebody's ego not letting them accept something that is the truth of the external sense? So that could create a state of anger, create a state of tension. That would change the physiology, actually ramp up fight or flight response, and then maybe create behavior like yelling, screaming, lashing out at people that you love, right? That's horrible. So what we see when we change mindset is that it's right here in the middle. We change, well, what is the thing I should be thinking? What is the change that I should be making? How do I hold on to that? And actually adding just mindfulness to that step, saying, look, let's change. Instead of, the problem-solving mindset and focusing on what we learn and what we know and the behaviors and the attitudes and the values that we take in terms of that, let's go ahead and shift that into the creation mindset, where we take a breath, where we think about what we want to do and how to start taking those steps. The internal representation changes, and therefore our state changes, right? The creation mindset, we don't end up angry at anything. We end up thinking, oh, wow, we were already successful. We are already happy. We stay in a state of happiness ourselves. We take every step that we want, moving in the right direction. And in that case, the physiology responds accordingly. And then the external behaviors respond accordingly. And it all starts with that choice of how to react to a circumstance. And that choice ends up landing with the mindset, with the identity. And looking back at the previous page and thinking about that, none of the choices are absent to us. We may not have been taught them. We may not have been educated about them. And updating mindsets is necessary in this day and age to continue to change how we see things internally, how we experience the world around us, because that's the fun part about this. When information comes in and it hits the internal state and the physiology, there's the behavior, and we can choose, being mindful about the behavior, to shift that. And if we choose to shift the behavior, it changes the physiology, it changes the state, and it changes the internal representation. It actually moves backwards to shift how we see ourselves. And that's why a lot of gurus, a lot of teachers will actually say, take the time to think about things. Don't act on your instincts. Instincts can be trained to be poor. That the more time that we think about things, the more time that we open up to the possibilities, right? Moving beyond the conscious to subconscious, moving up to possibilities, something more is out there, something more is available to us, whether that's energy, frequency, the universe, whatever. I love to think that it's the quantum field, which is literally energy of every possibility everywhere all at the same time, until you observe it and collapse the waveform of possibility into what you see in front of you. because really we're all quantum beings. On the smallest fundamental levels, we are atoms, we are protons and electrons, and things at that realm behave weird, and they're connected in weird ways. And we can see how shifting a mindset changes the way that we react with the outside world, which changes the way that the outside world reacts with us. And when we add the idea that the reticular activating system wants to please us, really, we choose what the reticular activating system, which is a process back here that's sort of unconscious, but it sees everything and filters out most of the experience because it would just be too overwhelming for our brains, and gives us a simple platform for our concept of reality. Well, when we change mindsets, it's sort of difficult at first because we are moving against the reticular activating system. We are reprogramming it to look for different things. And as we start to reprogram it, we shift the state that we're in. We shift away from problem solving into a more creative state. What do I want to create in the world? What do I want to create for myself? What do I want to create for my clients? It's a powerful step to take because you are literally telling your mind, we are going to change the way that we perceive reality. And when you gain that ability, when you start to realize that you can shift how you perceive reality, moving beyond the stability of the subconscious mind, moving beyond the contrast awareness of the conscious and unconscious being into a state of, look, the world is open. My experiences of the past have influenced who I am now by creating traumas, by creating separate divisions of myself that could handle those aspects and the things that happened. Those are still not me. Because I am here now. Eckhart Tolle says, I am here now, right? This is me. I remain present. I am not anything that came before. And by remaining present, I am actually more available for the possibilities of the future. And when things happen, I am more in control of that state, of the influence, of taking things in and examining them and deciding what steps I truly want to take with my behavior into the future, making the choice for a mindset that is open and creative and super powerful. So that's a huge amount of information today. Like I said, that's probably about 5 coaching sessions that you just got. I hope it is helpful to you. I hope it helps you see the way that your brain works, the way that your mind works, the way that you have processed who you are and grown into who you are, and really help you see what you can become in the future. This branding process, the manifest design experience, is all about taking everything you have been, making it choosing the best words and the best pictures of how to represent yourself, and then giving that back to yourself to train your reticular activating system to recognize that you have every possibility open in the future because you are enough to do it. You are worthy of that future. You simply are connecting with it now and moving down that path. So if you want to move down that path faster, if you want to move through this entire process faster, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one for your business, your coaching stuff, your consulting, your whatever business you are doing. I know we've got real estate people on here and a whole bunch of different other naturopaths and acupuncturists on here. If you want this for yourself, I am available for one-on-one work. The manifest design process is amazing, fantastic, and actually shifting a lot of lives right now. It is remarkable. I'm in love with this process. You can check it out for yourself. Get more details at thinktankcreative.net. Click a button right on there for your application call. That's just one-on-one, you and I, making sure that I can serve you, that what you're looking for through this entire process is aligned with something that we can actually get through and get through coaching, because I want to see you successful. I want to see you growing. I want to see you embracing all the awesomeness that you are so that you can reach every next step of your life and feel fulfilled and feel wealthy and healthy and wise and fantastic. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead, just write comments down below, like, share, invite other people to the group. I really appreciate you all. Thank you. I love you. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Take care.